Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And the topic for today is Dungeon Masters not using initiative is lazy, particularly in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. All of my references will be back to the current version of Dungeons & Dragons. So why is it lazy? Let's break this down and I'll have a good hard look at it. Why do Dungeon Masters tolerate the current initiative system for Dungeons & Dragons 5e combat? Why do people tolerate it? I wonder why I tolerate it. There's a lot of things that are good and bad about it. Is it just that it is the system that people traditionally have used for so long and we just can't let go of it and it just permeates the game and stays there, and we're sort of, this is what we're used to, so we're going to keep doing the same thing we've always done before? Maybe that's what's going on. And then the argument is we need a order of turns to manage combat. You can't just, if you don't have a turn order in a system like this, you've got a whole bunch of people trying to do everything at the same time, it's impossible to manage. So we've got to have a turn system. So hence, initiative makes it possible to create that system. Well, okay, fine. Dungeon Masters like asking that, please roll initiative. Do Dungeon Masters actually like asking that question? I know I don't necessarily find myself enjoying that process at all because I know what's coming next. And then you've got to go through the process of players looking at initiative modifiers if they've forgotten what they are, rolling a 20-sided dice or picking up the 20-sided dice. You wait for them as they add numbers up. Is this really fun? Is this really the aspect of combat and Dungeons & Dragons we were so excited to play? I really don't believe that it is. Then the argument goes that there's no better way to manage Dungeons & Dragons 5e combat, that nobody's come up with something that's better. So therefore, this is what we're using. And that grates on me an awful lot. The fact is that initiative slows down combat. The very inception of your combat and something happens that triggers a battle. And the first thing we do is we have to go through the number crunching and the dice rolling process. And there's an awful lot of waiting going on because we're not just waiting for one person to make a dice roll, we're waiting for the entire table to make dice rolls. And then you've got to put it all into order. I just don't get it. And a lot of people have commented on alternatives to initiative. I've even done a video on variant initiative called group initiative. Those with high initiative modifiers don't necessarily get to go before other characters with a low dexterity or a low initiative modifier. So it doesn't even follow that because of the variation of a 20-sided dice, you can get a 1, you can get a 20, and your modifier added to that. I mean, of course, on average, as a general rule, somebody with a higher initiative modifier is going to get to go first over somebody who's got a low initiative modifier. Over time, that'll play out. Absolutely, I agree. But it doesn't guarantee that somebody with a high initiative modifier or who has a quick, fast character would actually do that. And then there's the argument about dexterity. Does dexterity actually have anything to do with your ability to respond at the inception or at the beginning of a battle? And the argument seems to be, to me, that no, not necessarily. I've had plenty of experience in martial arts, and dexterity is not the only thing that's really important. There's a lot of other things going on. In fact, it would make much more sense to me to use wisdom over dexterity. But that's beside the point. Because of the variation on a 20-sided dice, you're not even necessarily going to wind up with a character who has a high initiative being able to go first, or over somebody with a low initiative. That's the fact. A dungeon master not using traditional initiative systems is lazy. Yeah, absolutely. There are other systems in place that certainly are a bit quicker and involve removing a lot of the other barriers and the mathematics to it. But it's not just lazy, it's actually smart. It's somebody who's actually managed to finally give up the horse when a dead horse needs to die. I've been for years trying to figure out how to get my players to ditch initiative, and it's been a struggle, and as slowly but surely I will find a way to finally release myself from this dead horse that's been dangling around my neck as a dungeon master for years. And what I've found, not just based on my own personal experience, but the experience of other dungeon masters, and they've talked to me about different ways of doing initiative and what they've tried and what worked for them and their feedback. And as far as I can tell, there are a lot of benefits to ditching the old system of initiative completely. There are lots of ways to manage combat without initiative, and I want to just spell out some of the things that I've come across over the years, and you'll obviously have an opportunity to sort of process that. 1, just go around the table, whether it be clockwise or anti-clockwise, and everybody just takes their turn that way. So you just eliminated the requirement to roll dice and adding up maths, and just sped everything up, made it a lot more simple. So why not go with that? Absolutely, let's do something like that. That makes so much more sense to me. And then of course the question is, yeah, but Fred, what about when do you go clockwise and when do you go anti-clockwise? Are we always going to be going clockwise, so the person on one side of the dungeon master, I'm assuming you were going to start with the person who's the dungeon master and would go that way. Is that how it's going to work? Or are we going to start with the dungeon master? Where do we start? I would just say, look, have the dungeon master roll a d6 if you're really concerned about which direction you should be going. Roll a 6-sided dice, have the dungeon master do that, select the direction using that. So 1 to 3, you go clockwise, 4 to 6, you go anti-clockwise if you really need to worry about that sort of thing. Personally, I think it would be perfectly fine to decide, well, okay, well, the first combat we have, we're going to go clockwise. The next combat, we're going to go anti-clockwise. So we're going to rotate and change the direction every single time. Would that hurt the game? I don't know that it really would. I think it would actually just mean it would change things up each time, make it a little bit different. Put everyone's initiative modifier in order. And it's one way you can just eliminate the dice roll. Just place everybody's initiative modifier in order on your Dungeon Master screen. No dice rolling, and that order stays the same the whole time. And if there's a tie that needs to be broken with a player, let the players figure that out between them, between their characters. They can just sort of like, okay, well, we're both on the same initiative modifier. We won't roll a dice to determine. We'll just decide who's going to go. You know, it's already baked in, that whole concept into Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Oh, what about the Dungeon Master? Well, the Dungeon Master gets to choose. And I would say, Dungeon Master, just take your turn. If you've got a monster with initiative modifier the same as somebody else who's a player character, then just take your turn. Why not? Because honestly, combat is not very, very long in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Everything's usually over in 1 to 3 rounds. So let's just streamline it, make it a little bit easier for everybody. And then, of course, if you've got a whole bunch of players who are all going to be taking their turn in a row, well, don't have one person take their turn. If you've got your fighter and your rogue and your wizard all going to be acting sort of sequentially, just say, look, all take your turn at the same time. And I've talked about this before. Managing one person at a time is pretty easy for a dungeon master. 2, a little bit harder. 3, maybe a little bit more skill required. But it can be done. I've seen it done. I'm sure you can manage something like that. I encourage you to consider doing it because it will help move things along, and it eliminates a whole lot of headache that you didn't really need to engage in. Okay, so what happens if we do this? Well, now we are eliminating those people who should be acting quickly, and therefore, you know, it's just random who, essentially, depending on where you're going to position yourself. So now it becomes important about which side you sit with regard to the Dungeon Master. I'm going to make sure I'm sitting right beside the Dungeon Master on, you know, the clockwise side or the anti-clockwise side, so I get to go first. And is there going to be a battle for the chair? No, well, let's eliminate that problem completely. If we are really concerned about who goes first in a round and about getting a chance to actually perform an action and have your turn, let's eliminate that problem. And the easiest way to do that is to say, no monsters and no characters, no NPCs, no creatures are going to die or fall unconscious or be dying till everybody takes their turn in that 6-second round. So nobody falls unconscious, nobody dies, everybody gets to take their turn, and at the very end of the round when it's complete, then anybody who is sitting on 0 hit points will die, be unconscious or dying. And that eliminates that problem, solves the issue of who goes first or who goes in the order, and you still get to take your turn. And I think that is the easiest way, and it makes combat swift. It still means that even if you go down, you are going to still get to act in that round because you don't fall unconscious or die till the very end of the round. Aren't we told that everything in combat happens in this round in 6 seconds? It's not like there's a sequence of events. And the problem with Dungeons & Dragons 5e is that there's so much sequencing taking place to help manage the table that eventually what we wind up with is reactions and a whole lot of other things going on. And, the who goes first and who goes second becomes highly important, when in fact we can eliminate that by just saying that everything happens at the same time, and by doing it this way, everybody gets to have their turn, including the monsters, and we just move on from there. Okay, so here's a problem that will rise. As all of you probably already know, there is a thing called surprise. And surprise basically means that usually in the first round of combat, if you are unaware of your enemy, you are surprised, which means you can't do anything. It's not till the end of your turn, when you've completed your turn, that your reaction becomes available. So the whole system starts to fall apart when we start modifying and changing initiative in the initiative system for Dungeons & Dragons 5e because of surprise. Well, how can we solve this problem? Well, there is an easy way to solve it, and I'll tell you what, some of the silly things that have been incorporated into Dungeons & Dragons that make things hugely more complicated than they really needed to be. Why did we even make that possible? Why did we even include it is possible to take a reaction during a round as long as you've taken your turn and you didn't get to do anything and you were surprised? So surprise in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, is that the problem? Yes. In terms of using initiative in this way, so what do? Get rid of it. Just drop it. Just ditch it. You don't need it. It doesn't need to be there. Reactions are still going to be able to be taken in round 2 and 3 with regard to spells and other things that you might be able to do with your character. But if you're surprised, you just don't do anything whatsoever till the round ends. And easy peasy, so simple to run, and you don't have to worry about tracking all of that nonsense. And you've eliminated a rule that just added a level of complexity that really didn't need to be there in the first place. Because remember, everything in a round is supposed to be happening all at the same time, right? Now, I'm hoping you found this video helpful and useful to you, and that maybe it's helped you look at a way of removing initiative, or at least presenting the idea to players. And if you're a player, maybe you'll be more open to the idea of deciding it's all right to change up initiative and do something a little bit different. Let's just ditch it and go with something that's a little less structured in form, and then we can still play our game. We all still get to do our turns. Now look, if you like this sort of thing, I have a playlist called The Lazy Dungeon Master, and there's a whole lot of videos in that playlist that talk about speeding up play, making life easy for you as a dungeon master. Lots and lots of really good advice. Otherwise, I have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters, which you're welcome to go and check out. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing video content like this, I have a Patreon page where you can support me there, get access to the unlisted live streams, additional content, and priority on the videos that I make. I also have affiliate links down in the description to the book depository and Amazon. If you buy stuff online, I get a small commission from that. I have a merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos if you wanted to buy some sort of swag from the channel. And make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.